Zane Smith finally gets announced. Corey LaJoie may not be driving the 51 for Rick Ware next season, and where NASCAR stacks up against other motorsports according to ratings. Let's get into it. Coming up next. What's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing good today. All right, as you see from this graphic right here, Zane Smith is back with Front Row Motorsports, where he won the 2022 Cup Championship with them. And last season was a tale of two halves. The first half of the season, he struggled to finish anywhere above 26th or so in the first half of the season. Second half of the season, he did have 4 top 10s. So a good finish to the season for his rookie year in the Cup Series. But who will his crew chief be? And that crew chief, of course, will be Ryan Burgundy. He's previously been working with Todd Gilliland last season, where he got 1 top 5, 6 top 10s in the full year with the G-Man. But it's not the first time he has worked with Zane Smith. In 2023, he had 6 starts with Zane Smith and got a top 10 out of that. So not their first time working together, but their first time working a full season together. So it should be exciting to see what they accomplish, especially at Front Row Motorsports, who is now a Tier 1 Ford team in the alliance with Ford, or however that works. And they also have the alliance with Penske. So you've seen Front Row Motorsports just keep building and building each season, getting better and better. And now it looks like everything is in line for them to continue that progression, and you might see an even bigger jump in performance this season. So that was pretty much a surefire, stone-cold lead pipe lock. Everybody kind of knew that Zane Smith was going to be the driver of that car, but one car that we don't know who is going to be the driver for that has an alliance with RFK is the 51 for Rick Ware Racing, where you see Bob Pockers responding to a question here. I thought Corey LaJoie had been confirmed for the 51. Corey LaJoie is still working on his 2025 plans, but not expected to be full-time in the Rick Ware Racing number 51 in 2025. Cody Ware appears to be the likely driver of that car. So a lot of questions still surrounding the 51. Even if Cody Ware drives it, will he be the driver full-time for the full season, or will it be a ride where they split seat time in it? We've seen Rick Ware Racing do things like that. So is Corey LaJoie going to drive it part-time? Cody Ware drives it part-time. It could be a situation like that. Or is Corey LaJoie going to do something completely different, like race in trucks or the Xfinity Series? Me personally, I don't think that would necessarily be the worst case scenario for him, because as we've seen with Cole Custer, as we've seen with John Hunter Nemechek, go down to the Xfinity Series, go down to the Truck Series, have a good season, get in the winning column, just win a bunch of races down there, and you improve your stock and you raise your level back up to where you might get an opportunity at the Cup Series level in better equipment than possibly you've had an opportunity to race throughout historically Corey LaJoie's career, with the exception, of course, of last season where Spire did seem to rise up, but still was kind of a mid-level equipment team. Of course, Spire this season is expected to make a huge jump in performance and continue their forward momentum, much like Front Row Motorsports has. But let's just play devil's advocate to all the people that are like, hey, drop down to the Xfinity Series, things will go well. Where a driver did drop down to the Xfinity Series or the Truck Series, and they haven't ever been able to get back into the Cup Series, haven't ever been able to get into the right situation, and that, of course, is Matt DiBenedetto. I think Matt DiBenedetto is a very talented race car driver. He went over to Rackley Ware Racing, I don't know why I just called it Ware. Anyway, Rackley War Racing, where he did a good job over there in the Truck Series. He seemed to raise that team up to a certain level, but they wanted to move on. They wanted a different driver over there. They wanted their son, the owner's son, to drive over there. So that was the situation. He got moved around, and then, of course, last year he went over there to RSS Viking, where he had some good runs, but obviously RSS Viking, although they've got good equipment, they're not the RCRs, they're not the Joe Gibbs Racings of that particular Xfinity Series, so he's still not in equipment where he can go out there and rack up a bunch of wins, so it can go either way. It just depends on which path you want to look at. Is your glass half empty? Is your glass half full? That's basically what this argument boils down to. But either way, for the Corey LaJoie fans, hope it works out for them, and whoever is in that 51 for Rick Ware Racing and the RFK Alliance next season hopefully works out for them as well. Derrick Cope Racing and his family have started Cope Family Racing to compete in the Xfinity Series next season, with Leland Honeyman Jr. and Thomas Annunziata will split driving duties of the number 70 car. Full schedule of races to be determined. We'll get cars from RCR and engines from ECR. So there you go, Derrick Cope, the San Diego native, the West Coast Hall of Famer, the 1990 Daytona 500 champion, even though Dale Earnhardt probably should have won that race. Still salty about that, but I'll get over it one day. Probably not. But they do have a couple of young race car drivers over there who might can do something. Leland Honeyman, of course, won the Carolina Pro late model. He was Rookie of the Year in that. And I remember one year he won the Fall Brawl over there in Hickory. So pretty good young talent right there. And in 41 starts or so, I think he's got 2 top 10s. And he hasn't necessarily been driving the best equipment in the Xfinity series, at least not the Joe Gibbs Racing RCR type of equipment over there, Junior Motorsports. So good talent over there. And then you've got Thomas Annunziata, the Colts Neck, New Jersey native, where he has won a couple of Spec Miata championships. I think he's got 3 or 4 maybe karting championships, and he has run some select late model, pro late model races. I remember him racing one time, at least at Orange County. That's a name you don't really forget. Good last name as far as marketing goes, because it'll stick with you if you can pronounce it, which I'll be honest with you, screwed it up at least twice here in this one right here. But hopefully with the RCR cars there and the ECR horsepower, they will have good equipment, and hopefully they can show what they are able to do next season. That, of course, is not the end of the driver news, as Mike Wallace is going to hook up with MBM and Carl Long to run the Daytona 500, or at least attempt to qualify for the Daytona 500. Mike Wallace, the other Wallace brother, basically, the one that doesn't get talked about the most, Kenny Wallace on YouTube, has a TV show. He's always in people's mind. Rusty Wallace, of course, a Hall of Famer. But Mike Wallace is no slouch on these super speedways, and throughout his career, he has got some good results there. In 2000, he won in trucks at Daytona, and I think in 2011 for KHI, I might have the year wrong there, but I think around 2011, he won for KHI at Talladega, so good restrictor plate record there. He also had a 4th in the Cup Series in 2007 in the Daytona 500 and has 14 top 10s, and not necessarily the best equipment in the history of Cup racing in 197 starts. A lot of that success has come at super speedways, so you might see him do something. You might see him at least qualify. It'll all depend on what type of equipment the 66 car is that weekend, how much sponsor money they can get, how good can they make the car. But a cool story, a lot of Wallace fans are going to be super excited that they're going to have a Wallace to pull for on the racetrack. Then, of course, saw this on J-Ski, where NASCAR Man had compiled the 2024 auto racing events ranked by average number of U.S. television viewers. NASCAR Man out there doing the Lord's work. There may be a few omissions if the race viewership wasn't reported. NASCAR Cup Series claimed the top 15 television audiences for racing in the United States in 2024, and 37 of the top 38. The Chicago race was tops for the Xfinity Series, coming in at 39th on the list. The season opening Truck Series race at Daytona was 63rd. So NASCAR is still top dog as far as United States television rankings go. We'll see what happens next season with all the streaming and all the various other platforms that NASCAR racing will be on, if they're able to maintain that advantage, or what happens with that going forward. And one final bit of news, of course, the Clash now has a title sponsor, Cookout, so it is the Cookout Clash, so COC is the acronym. Do with that information what you will, but that's all I got for you on this one. If you made it this far, I would love to have your subscription. If not, I'll just keep making these things. If you got a question, comment, or anything like that, leave it down in the comment section. If you're already subscribed, of course, you know I appreciate you all as well, and other than that, thanks for your time. Peace!